Hi everyone, I'm David Cox, and this evening I held my first virtual community meeting, and here I am just to introduce it. I would like to thank everyone who participated. We had a pretty good crowd, I thought, and with lots of people came and attended. I'd also like to thank Councilmember Stewart for also attending, and um, and without further ado, here is the meeting.
Okay, that's all right. All right.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'll try that again.
Hey, Mr. Cox, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I had my own computer speaker turned off. We'll get started in a couple minutes. We'll see how many people join, and
Okay.
then we'll go from there.
All right. Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, it's a bit of an experiment, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, there's a few more people.
Yeah, I've been in Zoom calls ever since this thing started. That's all I do.
Help you.
Everybody, lots of people are joining right now, so I'm
Okay.
clicking away to let people in here.
Good. You set up your waiting room.
Yeah. I have room for 100 people. I
Wow.
might hit that.
Can you show me? Oh, sorry. Here we go.
Okay, I muted everybody just to help keep the noise level to a reasonable level. All right. Just give it another minute or so. Okay, so there is a chat window. I don't know if you're familiar with this. You should find a button somewhere on your user interface that will open the chat window. And if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat window. That way I can capture them. Also, I want to note that if I set this up correctly, it should be recording. And we will see if that actually works or not.
I just have a labiche.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, there's still more people joining. Looks like we're up to 32 participants right now. All right, well, let's get started. If more people join, that'll be fine. I am using the free version of Zoom, so this will limit the meeting to 40 minutes. But I don't really think I have 40 minutes of material to share. Mostly I would be interested in taking questions. And again, feel free to use the chat window to ask questions. If you have a question and you're on video, feel free to raise a hand and I can unmute you. And there is a raise hand button on here somewhere, and a little hand will show up presumably next to your name, but I've got so many names I don't know if I'll necessarily see that. The best thing might be just to use the chat window, and I'll keep an eye on that. I wanted to start off with it just with a few announcements. One is that in case you haven't heard, the restrictions that Wake County and the municipalities within Wake have put into place regarding COVID-19 expired tonight, and they're not going to be renewed. What is going to happen is that, at least in Raleigh, for example, and most of the municipalities, if not all within Wake County, will be following the guidance provided by the governor regarding COVID-19. So whatever restrictions in terms of gatherings and staying at home and so forth, those will be coming from the governor's office rather than from the county or from Raleigh. I do support the goal of making sure that we have adequate testing and tracing in place, and hopefully we will see very soon a decrease in the number of cases, the number of hospitalizations, and importantly, the number of deaths by COVID-19. And been watching the news tonight, and it seems that researchers are making some headway in terms of new drugs to treat the COVID-19 or coronavirus, and as well as development of a vaccine. But of course, those, especially the development of the vaccine, is a little ways out. And in the meantime, I think we need to take some precautions to make sure this thing doesn't explode on us. Let's see, what else do we have? Just looking at my notes. You probably have heard that we recently established $1 million for small business grants to help out small businesses. The city will be providing some small grants in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $10,000, perhaps smaller, depending on the need, and to help out businesses. One of the things I have a concern about is that one of the requirements to apply for one of these grants is that you must have a storefront, and a number of businesses have contacted me that do not have storefronts. There are people that run pet care businesses out of their homes. There are contractors that are running their businesses out of their homes. Home child care providers, for example, as well. And what they're telling me is that, they too have business requirements. They have licensing requirements that don't go away, bonding requirements, insurance. They need to keep up with their professional associations. They need to pay for ongoing transportation. If you're a contractor, like you might have a vehicle that you're making payments on, and they've pretty much all have seen a decline in business. Certainly, many of them have seen a decline of more than 25%, which is what we require in order to apply for one of the business grants. And so I personally think that in terms of fairness, we should remove the storefront requirement, and that is something that I will bring up for discussion on Tuesday at the City Council meeting. I looked over the agenda today, and I see that there is an item on the agenda to spend $72,000 out of our contingency fund to hire a contractor to help us implement citizen engagement that will be a replacement for our citizen advisory councils. As probably most of you know, I've been a very strong supporter of our citizen advisory councils and was very disappointed when this council voted to discontinue funding and support of the CACs. And now we are approaching 100 days out. There's no replacement for CACs. And now we're proposing to spend $72,000 on a 3-phase process that will extend for 10 months to study how we should engage with citizens when we've had in place for 50 years a mechanism to do exactly that. And so that was one thing that I wanted to highlight to you. And so other issues, I was hoping that the city, considering the financial crunch, we could save some money by not investing money in designer bus shelters. I'll get to you one moment, Larry. And that we could save some money, but I've been told that we've executed that contract, and it's unclear to me if we can back out of that contract or not. I am told that the delivery of those designer bus shelters has been delayed because of the COVID-19 situation, and I'm trying to get more information. Okay, so with that, let me turn to the chat window and see what kinds of questions I have. Okay, what is council's process to? So the $1 million grant, what is council's process to ensure that it is distributed equitably? And I guess the question is that we are turning to some a couple of outside agencies that have a long history of distributing these grant funds. We did not put in place any specific requirements regarding equity, but we are relying on those organizations to be able to provide for that process. All right, so another question. Tourism is a huge financial boost to our city. Does our council or Chamber of Commerce have a plan of action to get some of that money flowing again? I don't think, we do not have a specific action plan. I've not seen a specific action plan within the city. I don't know if the Chamber of Commerce has one or not. Honestly, regarding the tourism industry, whether restrictions are lifted or not, people are going to be concerned about the spread of the virus and catching the virus. More than 50% of the people in this country do have some sort of a medical condition, whether it be high blood pressure or diabetes, or whether they have cancer, or whether they're simply elderly and frail. And so I think long term, until there is a vaccine and we get the COVID-19 situation under control, the tourism industry will take a hit. Let's see. So one of the questions is, David, if it was 3 months ago that they eliminated CACs, if it's taking 10 more months to create a citizen engagement solution, what are they doing in the interim? Really, there's been nothing put in place. What we are relying on, I guess, is for individual counselors like myself to hold meetings such as this to encourage people to come forward and participate and communicate through this avenue. And honestly, if the CACs were in place, the CACs would have had to operate like this. However, instead of 5 district councilors doing this, we would have had 18 CACs, and they would have had a host of volunteers to help out with this process. And if the CACs had continued, instead of just me being here, we could have had participation from city staff, such as police officers, to report on police activity in the neighborhoods. We could have had reports on development, such as we've had at CACs. And that could have all been done remotely, just as I'm doing this meeting here tonight. But unfortunately, nothing like that has been put into place. I have another question about what is the status of the Six Forks Corridor project. I don't have an answer with me on that right at the moment, but that is something I've got the question here, and I will ask city staff for an update on that. Another question, will the city council meeting scheduled for Tuesday be online? Will citizens be able to participate in the meeting using Zoom? You can participate in the meeting using Zoom if you, first of all, the answer is yes. The meeting will be held online Tuesday using Zoom. And if you have requested to speak to council either through a public comment period or as part of a public hearing, you will be provided instructions for joining the Zoom meeting. Otherwise, you can watch the meeting on TV or online. The meeting will be broadcast on the RTN network, and the meeting will also be available through YouTube, for example. And online on the city's website. So those would be ways that you can watch the meeting, but there's no way to participate in the meeting through those avenues. Let's see. Let's see, if you are able, could you update the attendees on the council's efforts to research the possibility of extending to 4 years? There is a committee that's looking into that. I've not gotten any update about that. And so I will take this question back and see where we are in that process. In addition to extending terms to 4 years, one of the things that I'm more concerned about is representation. Currently, right now, if you look at the makeup of our city council, most of our city councilors really live near downtown, and 4 of them live in District C. We have 2 at-large councilors as well as the mayor, which really only leaves us 5 districts. And even though the city's population has grown tremendously over the years, we have not grown city council at all. And so we are left with 8 people, 7 councilors and the mayor on council. And I think what we need to do is grow city council. I personally think we should eliminate at-large council members. We really don't need what are effectively 3 mayors on council. And we should have more districts in the city and more district council members. That would do a couple things. That would diversify our representation. I think it would diversify in terms of our demographics. I think it would diversify in terms of our geography. I happen to live, away in North Raleigh. I'm probably the only counselor that really represents or knows what it's like to live out here in what people refer to as the suburbs. And I would like to see better representation geographically throughout the city, so that we do get better representation. I know a lot of people are frustrated that we don't have that kind of diversity of representation. So I'm less concerned about extending the terms for 4 years. I'm less concerned about the other proposal to increase the salaries of counselors. And I'm more concerned about increasing the number of district counselors and increasing the diversity on city council. All right, hold on one second here. Okay, so one question is, what is up with new zoning regulations? CACs used to have a say in our concerns. Well, like I say, right now, for example, we have several public hearings coming up on Tuesday. And for example, there are a couple of annexation petitions. There is a comp plan amendment regarding the south side of Tryon Road near Gorman. We have another comprehensive plan amendment for an extension of West Morgan Street. We have a zoning request Z120 for a continuing care retirement community off of Oberlin. And all those things would get discussed at a CAC meeting. And because most of these have been discussed at a CAC meeting, but the CAC meetings have ended. So going forward, we're not going to have those discussions. And I don't know when in the future we will have those discussions. All right, let's see. How are we doing on time? 7:18. All right, time is going fast. All right, here's another question, and I might make sure I'm not on mute. Many cities and hotel chains are working together to offer rooms to first responders who are required to deal directly with the public and may not want to run the risk of taking the virus home to families in their off hours. Is Raleigh doing anything in this regard? I've actually had conversations with some police and firefighters. A couple of them have been exposed to people who have tested positive for coronavirus. I have asked, like in other cities, if it's possible for those first responders to stay in a hotel room and during the period that they are most contagious, so they don't have to take the virus home to their families. And unfortunately, the city manager has said that we do not have provisions to allow that. And that is definitely something that I advocate for and would support going forward. Our first responders are out there. They're helping us out. I think we need to help them out. And in particular, if they're concerned about exposing their family members to this virus through their work, then I really think as a community, we should be supporting them. All right. Another question. The method used for yard waste cleanup after the storm seems effective for yard waste. Can we continue that service solution while we are under COVID restrictions? I certainly support being able to do that. I continue to ask that question myself with the city manager and as well as staff. And I hope I will continue to ask that question and see where we are on that and see what the updates are. Hopefully, as we move forward and as more restrictions are loosened and we are able to maintain some control over the virus, that we can see an improvement in how we are addressing yard waste. Lots of questions here. One other question. Given that the CACs no longer exist, will requests by real estate developers for zoning changes be on hold while the city studies engagement strategies? If no, how will the public provide input and feedback during the study period? The CACs have been eliminated, but there are 2 neighborhood meetings that will be held. And those neighborhood meetings, notices will go out to people within 500 feet of the property, and they will be held virtually. The problem I have with those meetings is that only people that live within 500 feet will get notified. The rest of the community will not. The CACs, of course, provided a mechanism for communicating with the larger community. The other thing about the virtual meetings is that there's no standardization about technology. The technology that will be used will be up to the applicant. And if they want to use Zoom meetings in one case, or if they want to use Microsoft Teams in another case, that will be entirely up to the applicant. Whereas if we had CACs and we helped the CACs put on their virtual meetings, we could have standardized on the technology, and I think that would make it a lot easier. And we could have advertised the meetings to a wider audience. So the answer is no. The meetings will continue. We're not putting them on hold, and how those meetings are conducted will be done by the applicant. They will not be done by city staff. Okay, is there any status on the hotel on Capitol Boulevard? I did check into that just recently, and I'm told that the project is still on, and hopefully, of course, it's a big project, and hopefully by the end of the year, we will have, before the end of the year, I hope, we will have more certainty about what exactly is going to happen and what the timeline is. But so that's all I really know at this point. That's encouraging that the project has not been canceled at this point in time anyway. And a lot of it, I suppose, will depend on the situation of the economy. Okay, another question. What are anticipated impacts to individual departments' capital improvement program projects? We don't know the answer to that yet. We will be getting information from the manager and from city staff about the budget impacts shortly. I didn't see anything. Of course, I checked the agenda came out late today, and I checked it real quick before the meeting. I did not see any information about any updates regarding the budget for Tuesday, but that information should be coming shortly thereafter. So this is just a big thank you to the community police officers following Community Watch meeting and what they have done to reduce crime in the East Millbrook, Falls of News, North Bend area. So there's a shout out to our police officers. I see Mr. Mark is online, and I hope that message gets conveyed. Let's see. For a question about the application for small business grants available now, and will citizens be able to see which businesses are approved for these grants? Not the specifics of grant money, but simply the names of businesses who are granted. I will ask that question and see if I can get an answer to it. I would think that any money that is given out, any public monies that's dispersed would be a matter of public record. All right, let's see. How do you feel the city is doing to protect city staff with regard to COVID-19, bus drivers, sanitation workers, etc.? Do you feel the city's efforts measure up to Durham, for example? I talked to members of the police. I talked to members of the fire department. I talked to members, our sanitation workers, for example, our bus drivers. And I get mixed messages from folks. I think things have gotten better. I think early on, we had some challenges as far as providing gloves and masks. I think those challenges have been largely alleviated. And but there are still some things that remain. For example, I know city employees have been paying, they have an option to pay into a flexible spending account, for example, and that money can be used for childcare. And many of our employees have already paid a considerable amount of money into those funds. And so one of the things I need to explore is that I've been asked a question. Their understanding is that that money, if it's not spent on childcare, or for example, the money could be spent on city summer camp programs, for example. If the summer camp programs are canceled and the kids aren't going to those camps, that money sits in the account. And will the employees get that money back, or will it revert to the city? And I certainly would not support that the city keep that money. And if it's legally at all possible, I would like to see that the employees are able to get that money back. So that is something that I will be looking into. All right. Council has changed the sign-up procedure to speak at council meetings. It looks like next week's meeting requires sign-ups by the end of the day, Friday, which is the old procedure. Why this change? The main reason for that change is to allow staff to be able to help participants be able to use the technology and being able to join online and be able to handle the need to be able to display any materials that the person would like to present. If these online meetings or this online option continues, I hope that that gets smoothed out and that we will be able to revert back to allowing people to sign up as late as the day of the meeting. And then, let's see, council did away with the grassroots citizen voice when it eliminated CACs. Is there any commitment from council to reinstate support for a citizen-owned voice in rezoning negotiations, especially with impartial city staff facilitation? I think I addressed that previously with my comments about the neighborhood meetings, and staff is not going to be running those meetings. Those meetings will be run by the applicant. There is no CAC meeting or anything comparable to it where citizens are mediating those meetings. And so I guess that's the situation as of today. So, all right. I think I did a pretty good job going through the questions. If I missed anything, let me know. And Zoom has informed me that we're running out of time. And so I just wanted to let you know, we're coming up quickly on the 40-minute mark. if anyone has any more questions, what I'll do is, this is probably dangerous, but I'm going to unmute everybody. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll see if I can see you. And of course, some people aren't on video, so I can't see your hand. So yeah.
You have to go on video to raise your hand if you can.
All right, let's go back to the chat. All right, Mr. Larry Helfont, I see you waving away there.
David, well, I'm not familiar with Zoom. I hope this is coming out okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Hold on 1 minute. Hold on 1 minute.
I'm getting an me?
Okay, you're the only one unmuted, so go ahead.
Okay. I sent you an email earlier because I realized there's been a lot of effort towards community engagement.
Mhm.
Just within the last 2 weeks, I read about all of the survey and the outreach program that had been taking place. And I assume this was with the city employees. It never came up at the CACs when we were active. I would have considered the CACs as community outreach. And I really don't understand why they were separated, other than perhaps some personal differences. If they're going to spend so much effort on trying to provide some kind of community engagement, why don't they reestablish the CACs, which have never disbanded? We still exist. We're still waiting for some kind of program. It had a total budget of $20,000. I don't even think the budget amount is important to the CACs as much as public participation.
Right.
Instead of paying the $72,000 for a consultant plus cost for an ongoing process, why don't you ask to make a motion to reestablish the CACs at either a limited budget or no budget until something is put in place, and not a year from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think everybody knows where I stand. So that's my position, and I'd be happy to vote for the CACs and bringing them back.
Will you
They've
make a
been
motion?
valuable for the city, and so that's my position. Any other questions?
David Bill Shelby here, just real quick. Are you willing to make a motion in front of the council for that?
Yes, I can, and I will.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Happy to. Any other questions? And you can unmute yourself to ask the question, or you can send it to me in the chat window. So so I got,
I have a question.
yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Nicole Stewart, do you have any comments about reinstating the CACs?
Well, this isn't Nicole's meeting. What I would do is ask that you send her an email and give her an opportunity to respond.
All right, thank you.
All right, folks, I'm going to have to call it a meeting. We've come up, and I'm getting the last minute warning here from Zoom. And I really appreciate all of you attending. I think with like 35, 36 attendees at the top of this meeting, this is a really tremendous turnout. And I really thank you all for attending. If you want to send me feedback about the meeting, about how maybe it can be done better, or what you didn't like or what you did like, feel free to email me. My email address is david.cox@raleighnc.gov. And if you have questions or concerns about any issues, also feel free to email me. So with that, I'll wish you all a good night.
Hey, thank you, David. And Mark, you stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
David, I'll look forward to the next one.
Thank you, sir. I'll make sure I get it scheduled.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.